All right, guys, here we go. We got another live event tonight. We have John from, and I'm going to try, I think this is Cambio.
Cambio. It's okay. In Mexico, we call it Cambio. But we chose that name because everybody could pronounce it, even if they were pronouncing it wrong. So it's actually perfect that way.
So, just a little bit of background. John is one. I'm kind of envious. He's a chef. You have 6 restaurants, and is it around the Chicago area?
Yeah, 6 just north of the city, probably 25 miles north of Chicago.
Okay, which super strong. We know the culinary in the Chicago area is super strong, but then he decided to take on making tequila.
I was bored with the restaurant, so we decided to start a new project.
Well, first of all, we've all seen the shows. If you're involved in restaurants, there's no way you could be bored. You don't have a life outside of the restaurant.
Normally, yeah. I'm fortunate enough to craft a really great team and a really great set of restaurants with a bunch of people that help me and allow me to do lots of fun projects. So we definitely couldn't have done it without the incredible staff that we have at the restaurants. They do all the work. I just show up and I shake people's hands and I rewrite the menus and I leave for 2 weeks and go down to Guadalajara and make more tequila.
So, you still there?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. So what culinary that has to be something that comes at a very young age for you to continue as long as you have.
Yeah. I started cooking professionally when I was 15. I was still in high school in my junior year.
And yes, I think I read some of those articles and 19, and then you were in some pretty amazing restaurants at a very young age.
Yeah, it was really fortunate. The time that I started cooking and the openness and the change in American cuisine that was coming at that time was really special. The mid to late 90s was really pretty cool.
So you're a chef. At what point or what decided to get you to, okay, I'm bored. Now I'm going to go make a tequila.
What
was it?
The restaurants I've worked at, I've always had a really important part in all the beverage programs. When I was 22, the place I was working at decided to go for a grand award from spectators. So we built a list from 200 to 1,500 selections in 1 year. So I learned an incredible amount about wine. I did all the research for what we had to buy at auction and things we needed to get from different distributors. It was nonstop deliveries all day long, lots of tasting. And from that moment on, I've always managed all the beverage programs at all the restaurants I've worked at, and then obviously my own when we built them. So I've had a really keen interest in beverages in general. Definitely lots and lots of wine knowledge. I spend a lot of time in California and Oregon and Washington, and I've got a lot of friends out there that I physically made wine with them and spent time picking the grapes and everything. And so I just got a really kind of rounded background between my culinary and the beverage side. And then I married my incredible Mexican wife about 8 years ago. And marrying a Mexican Catholic comes with lots of family. I've got 92 first cousins. Not exaggerating. I counted them once when we were at a family barbecue. I did a pig roast, and I've never seen so many people that belong to one family in my life. And I'm Polish and French, and I have a good-sized family, but not like hers, man. It's a lot.
Yeah.
So one of my cousins asked if I ever would be interested in starting a tequila project and maybe working on something down in Mexico and developing a new style of tequila with a different outlook, maybe some different ideas from what has been done traditionally. So we spent about 6 months and started, looking at, I visited maybe 15, 20 different distilleries, everyone from G4 and Fortaleza to Herradura and Don Julio, and everything in between. Really trying to discover the ways it was made and learn as much as I could about the history and the lineage and how all the different generations have mattered and what they've done. And the thing that I love about tequila the most is two things. One is it really shows its terroir when it's made properly.
Yes.
I can taste tequilas and understand, they come from the highlands and lowlands and where in the highlands. And it's rare to have spirits that have that much terroir specificity to them. So I love that coming from a wine background. And the second thing that really struck me was the way that you make it and the specific process you use has a direct result on its quality. And so I thought that was maybe where we could make an impact, was to look at the specific process of how it was made and how the best tequilas were made. What was that process like? How old was it? What techniques did they use? And then take that and kind of look through it and see where could we fit in little changes here and there to try to make something really expressive and really special. And that's where the idea started. And here we are 4.5 years later.
and you got a tequila that I find very delightful. I mean, unlike a lot of other tequilas, I mean, they have similar, I'm not going to say similarity in profiles and stuff like that, but right off the bat, when I opened up yours, a lot of people are calling out, a cheesy smell and stuff like that. I don't really get that right off the bat.
I understand
what the citrus. I mean,
me too.
The first thing I think of almost immediately is some sort of a sweet green grape, right off the bat, and then followed by a ton of different citrus fruits and stuff like that. To me, it's almost like smelling a mixed drink, but it's just 3 ingredients
with one element. Yeah. It's really complex for sure. Both the process of how we make the yeast that we use. We have 2 different types of wooden fermentation tanks. We custom built our own tanks, and one's built for Mexican white pine, which is traditional for wood fermentation down in Mexico. And then the other half of them are built with American white oak from Tennessee, which is not traditional. We build custom tanks that are temperature controlled, so we can precisely regulate the temperature of the fermentation. We use 4 different types of yeasts that didn't exist in Mexico until we imported them. I know because when you import something new into Mexico, it takes 6 months longer than normal, and you have to fill out a separate set of forms to get it in the country. Whenever any item, whether it's a barrel or yeast or whatever, it comes to the country for the first time. So we had lots of that. So it was an interesting process to get everything together to get the tequila set up and actually start producing. It took us about 1.5 years of work before we made our first drop.
So, and I'm gonna go off of Tequila Matchmakers because you use French oak barrels
almost exclusively. Yeah.
And do you use a mixture of French oak barrels? Because I mean, I think that's predominantly what a lot of people are picking up on, which, I mean, some tequila makers, they'll use one, but then they're blending it with 2 other American
oak barrels,
or something with it, which gets really diluted, and you don't have that sweetness of the French oak coming out.
Right. I know that there's definitely a couple of schools of thought about what types of barrels to use. Obviously, super traditional would only be American white oak, only used whiskey barrels. I think that with our process, the way we do our fermentation, the yeast that we use during it, and to make tequila as expressive and as complex as it's capable of being, I think that French oak is the best type of oak to use for it. I just think it adds layers of flavor and complexity that American oak doesn't. And that's a personal opinion. One of them isn't right or wrong. I know that our tequila is really complex. We've got a great laboratory built into our distillery. We put everything we do through gas chromatographs and a full chemical sampling of it during the fermentation process, during distillation. So we really know the nuts and bolts of what make up our tequila. We know the way that it's built, and we've also run everyone else's through the same set of tests. So we know what everyone's look like, what everyone else's looks like, and what ours looks like. So, everybody gets different notes and different complexities to it. I think we created something pretty special. Whether or not everyone loves it or not, or everybody likes it a lot, and maybe likes something else more, that's okay. That's all personal opinion.
Right.
And I think that part's great. But I do like the way that French oak interacts with our tequila, especially. And I like the complexity and the texture and the flavors that it adds.
No, I totally agree, and I personally like the French oak because it adds a bit of sweetness and tang that you don't get out of the American oaks. One of my favorite that I know that uses French oak is Tao, and it comes out of 1414, and they do use a blend of a new French oak, a wine barrel French oak, and then American oak, so you get more prominent on and it really shines through on the Repo. But man, on the Añejo, it really takes on a flavor profile that's truly enjoyable.
Yeah, enjoyable, special, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it really adds some nice complexity that it's not the same as everybody else. And I'm not trying to knock any particular distillery down, but it just makes it just that much more special. It's like going out for a fillet at Texas Roadhouse or a fine dining restaurant. They may age it. They may do several things, and you're going to get two different results, and you're going to notice drastically of what the two are, how they're different. Even though
it definitely makes a large difference, especially if you're using mostly French oak. We've got, I think, 15 different barrel types that we use. And within those barrel types, we have a really amazing set of coopers. We've got two different coopers we work with in America, and then one in Baja that does a lot of maintenance for us and does some retoasting for us in Baja. But we'll take barrels generally that are used between 5 and 10 years old. Some we'll leave as a natural finish. They're normally used wine barrels, some from Bordeaux, some from Burgundy. Both for white and red versions, and then some from just American Chardonnay producers that use French oak. And we'll take the barrels and we'll leave some alone. We'll carve some out, take the toast out, and we'll have them recoopered to different levels of wine toast, low, medium, or high wine toast. And then we'll also leave some as raw wood, and we'll age tequila in raw wood old wine barrels with no toast at all. In fact, our Añejo, which we just bottled, this is one of only 6 bottles in the U.S. We just did it. Nobody has seen this yet. It's really not anywhere yet. But we did. Our Añejo this is our flagship Añejo. It's a blend of second use toasted 10-year-old barrels, and then first use untoasted barrels, so raw wood, and then about 10% of it is 30-year-old limousine cognac casks. So we use 3 different barrels with different types of toast inside and 3 different ages, so 12, 15, and 2 months old, to make our normal flagship Añejo. And so that's the way that you can use barrel finishing to create complexity in tequila without using additives and stuff like that. I really hate the idea that these plants spend 6 to 8 years in the ground, and we make what's supposed to be a really beautiful spirit out of it, and then dump a bunch of sugar and caramel color inside. There's no reason to use any of that stuff. You can be creative with the way you barrel things, and you can set up a really positive program, and you can create complexity. You can create different textures and different finishes. Even if you want to make really heavily caramely versions, you can do it that way.
Yeah, and if anybody's wondering, I mean, the legs on this thing holds forever.
Yeah, it's
lasts
a ton of texture.
There is so much oil in this. I mean,
there's a reason for that. We don't chill filter our tequila.
Yeah.
Almost every brand chill filters. The reason for doing that is if you don't remove some of the fats or some or all of the fats from your tequila and it gets frozen, the fats will separate, come out of solution. That happens with most brands. I can't say every single brand, but it does happen with most of them. Our fermentation process takes about 15 days total, so it's a very, very long, slow process at low temperatures. It physically builds a different structure of spirit, and because of that, we can leave all of our fats and oils in the tequila. We don't do any chill filtering at all, and you can freeze it to negative 20 degrees below zero, and nothing separates from it. We had to prove it to the distillery. Weren't going to bottle it because they were afraid that something would happen to it and people would criticize them for bottling something that was flawed. So we had to prove to them that the fats were not going to separate, and they don't. 20 degrees below zero for 2 weeks. It's got this nice even cloudiness when it's frozen that cold, and it just comes back to nice and clear when it warms up to room temperature. So the changing things that we do with our process and the way that we fermented it and the way that we cook our agave actually does make a different type of spirit, and it allows us to keep all those really beautiful fats, and you get all this great creaminess and this great texture in the tequila, and we don't have to add glycerin to it. Another reason how you don't need additives to make a certain style of tequila. We could probably make Casamigos with no additives at all and make it taste exactly the same. Maybe that would be a cool project. We should make a Casamigos special bottling with no additives and see how close we could get to their style of tequila.
Well, if you want to attempt that, I actually have one of the original George Clooney bottles here before he sold it, and then it went to another distillery, and then they started cutting and mass producing it.
That'd be something. That'd be kind of neat.
Yeah.
How close can we get to adulter tequila and do it natural, just to prove you can make it that way?
Yes.
I'm going to totally do that. I'm going to make a note real quick. Every time I talk and I have an idea, I got to write down right away. So the idea is we're going to pick something that has lots of caramel color, lots of sugar inside of it, and lots of glycerin, and we're going to create a naturally produced tequila that has a lot of those elements and see how close we can get. I like that. That'll be cool. That'll be a neat cellar series.
So with you mentioning that, do you think with your culinary background that has given you a little bit of an edge on creating this unique profile that is in your Blanco? And I've tried the other ones too, but I'll have to get back into them tonight. I remember they were amazing. That the one repo that you sent me, which isn't the Cellar series.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was awesome. I enjoyed that a lot. But I mean, even just the regular repo was, there was some amazing sweetness to it that, you pick up in the Blanco.
Without actually using sugar. Yeah,
right.
I agree. Our normal repo, our flagship Reposado, the white labels, goes through 3 different barrel types. So it's a month in white Bordeaux and white Burgundy barrels, and then it's 5 months in French oak Chardonnay casks that have been retoasted to a medium wine toast. So it actually goes into first fill barrels. They're old, but they've been redone and reworked, and so it comes off with a lot of texture and a lot of character to it. I wanted our Reposado to fit squarely between the Blanco and the Añejo, not be super close to Blanco, and that was more of a stylistic choice. I know that really traditionally, and certainly a lot of my favorite family-owned Mexican distilleries think our Reposado is like way too much. I describe it as it comes off like a baby Añejo. Rather than a more traditional Reposado. And that's just a stylistic choice. I wanted to make something with a little more character to it, and a little more body and structure. And so we chose to do it that way. That doesn't mean one is right or wrong. I want to make sure I'm not upsetting all the Ocho and Fortaleza very light colored Repo fans out there. I love them too. I've got them all sitting downstairs in my bar. So it's just we wanted to make it a little bit different. So, but everything we do is kind of like that. We just think about, what if we could try this that way or that way? I think that the piece of it comes in with the cooking of the agave. We cook our agaves whole instead of cutting them in half. I've seen even high quality distilleries will have agaves cut in half in the fields, and they're sitting in the field for who knows how long, and they get delivered on trucks to the distilleries already cut in half, already starting to dry out. Mm-hmm. And so when we harvest our agave, it starts early in the morning. It's done by 10 or 11 o'clock, and it's in the ovens by usually 2 to 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So we're cooking the same day that we pull everything out of the fields, and we leave them all whole. And we had to develop a special process for doing it. It's not something that's been done before, and we had a lot of no, it's not going to work that way. But really, you think about the way you cook a brisket or a pork shoulder, you do them whole slowly for a longer period of time, and you get a different result if you cut it in half and then do it that way. It's really the same idea. That piece of my chef background definitely influenced the way we were going to treat the agaves, and how we were going to cook them. And then everything else kind of, was all from different pieces of what I've done in my career after that.
So from my own standpoint, I mean, knowing that, cooking briskets or pork butts on the smoker, I mean, you're in several hours. I mean, if you piece it or you take the point away from, from the flat,
right,
you can cook it about half the time.
Yeah, definitely.
But to leave it as whole, I mean, you went from probably 6 to 8 hours to probably 12 to 14 hours.
Yeah, 12, 14, 24, depending on how long. And so it takes us roughly 4 days to cook our agaves. Normally, not the agaves, the piñas.
Yeah.
I can hear my cousin and my wife saying, "Stop saying agave, start saying piñas." Sorry. It takes us about 4 days total to do it. So about 96 hours. So it's a solid 25 to 35% longer than what a normal process would be. You just have to start off. That's one of the things that took us a while to figure out was what temperature to start the ovens at. We use only stone ovens. They're all steam driven, like traditional. And what temperature to start them at, how long to leave it, and we modulate the temperature and the time over that 4 days, so that it's not just one thing the whole time, but it actually changes. And the way you modulate that temperature over time actually brings out different flavors in the tequila. Sometimes it's really minerally if we cook it one way, and sometimes it's all flowers and fruit if we cook it the other way. So
wow.
It was neat figuring all that stuff out. But that's some of the work that we did. Some of the reason why we spent 3.5 years working on the brand before we actually launched it in Chicago in April.
And that is, to me, almost a little bit mind blowing about, being minerality or flowery, just depending on, the cooking. I've been to Casquine a number of times.
Yeah.
And
I love those guys. They're amazing.
Typically cook their agaves it's a 3-day process.
Yep.
Basically, they'll cook it from when the first guy gets there. They get the boiler fired up, and then they steam it, and then the last guy that leaves, they'll turn it off, and then it kind of rests at night. But obviously, there's enough residual heat within their stone ovens
for sure. Yeah.
And then they do a 3-day cycle. And when I toured Mexico and they brought some out, I just thought, that was some of the best cooked agave I ever had. And it was actually the outer part. It wasn't actually
the inside. Yeah, absolutely.
Even better.
Yeah, Casquine is really cool. They do a great job. We went to them, and we were thinking about working with them to produce our tequila there, but they're really busy. They make a lot of very good brands. Our tequila is really disruptive to a busy distillery. I mean, it takes 2 to 3 times as many days to ferment, and another 25% of cooking. So our whole process from start to finish is more than double what a regular brand would do. So all of that extra time is really disruptive to a distillery that is busy making lots of tequila for lots of people. So that's one of the reasons we're at the distillery we're at. It's not because they're a distillery that's famous for making high quality tequila. It's because they had an entire building that's only traditional methods. So it's only stone oven, only Tahona. They had fermentation tanks that we could modify. They let us modify their distillery, and then copper stills. That's all we used to make it. And they weren't using this building. Their offices are built into half of this building, and they've got a really great setup for traditional tequila, and they just weren't using it at all. So we asked them if it was okay for us to start building custom tanks and rip apart half their distillery, and they said, sure, no problem, go ahead, we don't care. And we're like, cool, that's great, because everybody else keeps telling us no. So it took us a year to find a place that wasn't busy. Remember, this is in 2020, 2021. Everybody's making as much tequila as they can possibly make, and we're buying all the agave we can buy, and it's just nonstop running around. So to find a distillery that one, wasn't using some of their facility, and two, was open enough to let us come in and modify what they normally do, and then help us along the way by giving us use of all their scientists and their laboratory, which I know sounds not very artisanal, but for our process, we wanted to make sure that our process was going to produce what we thought it was going to make, and we wanted to be able to prove it, not just theory and saying, well, we think it tastes better. We really wanted to see what made it up, what made it different, how does it change physically over time during fermentation, what does a cooking process look like. Needed a little bit of science in the background of that to help with the artistry piece of what we were trying to change, and they gave us all of these things and just said, whatever you want, we think it's great, go for it. They could not have been more welcoming and more helpful. It was special. It was really nice.
And if you guys go to Tequila Matchmaker, they actually have some really good photos on there of NOM 1605, and you'll see the cooling coils that they have in the middle of the fermentation tanks.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, if you guys think about it, I mean, it's kind of like what Felipe's doing, but in reverse at 1579, I think it is.
Yeah.
And where he's doing it from the outside in, you're doing it from the inside out.
Yeah.
To regulate the temperatures and to keep that, the yeast happy and absorb as much as the sugar content as you possibly can during the fermentation process.
Our yeast dies above 60 degrees. And their yeast, so we worked with Felipe for about 8 months. The very first trial for Cambio we ever made was made at Pandillo. And you want to talk about a historical family that could not have been more gracious and more generous, was to let some crazy white dude and make tequila, in what's a really important thing for him. He gave us everything we possibly could have needed. They had a couple of fermentation tanks they weren't using, so he just gave us a corner of the distillery and said, here's a corner for you. I think you're out of your mind, but go ahead, go for it. And then it came time to distill it, and we didn't have enough liquid to use the regular stills in the distillery. So he went and they grabbed his, I think it was his father's mezcal still from home. And we pulled it in back of the distillery, and we're literally stoking and creating a wood fire underneath this mezcal still to distill the very first drops of the very first experimental version of Cambio. And then we aged it in cognac and Chardonnay casks, and he released it last year. It was like 2 years in barrel, and he released it last year under, I think they called it 6 barrels. It was the very, very first experiment of Cambio.
Yes, I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah, so that was Valerie and my cousin and I. We made it there. It was all done by hand. His whole team worked with us and helped us make it. We started to learn how our yeast was going to work and how the barrel fermentation was going to be. And the fact that we used his family's old mezcal still to make it was really, really special. But again, we're really disruptive. It's difficult and that distillery is buried nonstop. They make an incredible amount of tequila for the size of that distillery. They're running all day long nonstop.
Yeah, and it's not like they have huge
stills
compared to some of the other places.
Everything they do is small, and it's really crafted. And I love every tequila that comes out of the distillery. I have them all in my bar. They're all fantastic.
Yeah.
His whole family was great. His sons were amazing to us. I mean, everybody was. It was super cool. And the fact that he thought it was okay to take our very first nugget of an idea, and that they were happy enough to release it from something and sell it to their customers was just it was a huge validation. We felt like really special and really honored that he did that. So I've got a bunch of it here. I every time I go around the country, if I see a bottle somewhere, I'll buy it. I was at Old Town Liquors in San Diego, and they had 2 bottles left, and I bought the last 2 bottles they had. So I'm always out there looking for them. So if anybody has any, they want to sell it, bring it back, because that was the very first kernel of Cambio. Was in Pandillo. It was neat. It was a great experience, and we wouldn't be where we are now without his help, and without he and his family, giving us the chance to just explore and experiment, right? And there's not a lot of that in Mexico, honestly. It's a lot of tradition, and for a guy with that family heritage to let us work in his distillery and to help us do it, it was cool, really special.
Do you think that your chef background and culinary experience helped break some of that ice, or
a little bit? Yeah, I think generally people respect chefs as people that like to work hard, and they're a lot more salt of the earth. And I know that TV chefs are maybe a little bit different. I'm not a TV chef. I'm a real chef that likes to work in his restaurants every day. I admittedly less in the last 9 months than normal, because we finally launched the brand. But being a chef and knowing that everybody likes to talk to chefs, and we've always got great stories, and we love our whole job to make other people happy. Every day I wake up and I think, what can I do today to make somebody else happy? It's rare to have an entire set of humans where their entire life is built around others' happiness. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's one of the things that, gets overlooked when they talk about chefs, especially people on TV and stuff like that. But when we wake up and we think about ideas of, I want to make this dish that way, and I want to tweak this piece and make that a little bit different, what we're really saying is, how can I make the people that I serve happier? And that's a really noble goal, and a really noble thing. And very few people anywhere in the world wake up every day and think about everyone else first before they think of themselves. And they're literally, their happiness and their self-worth derives from making other people happy. There's nothing doing like a big wine dinner or tequila dinner and walking into a room and having everybody clap for you. Like, that is honestly warming to your heart, and that makes you feel like you've done something that's worthwhile. And so to make that your life goal, and that's the thing you do for 30 years of your life, I think is really important.
So I got to ask, so you got 6 restaurants. Yeah. Is any of them Mexican?
One of them is, yeah. We did about 12 years ago. It's I'm going to say this. It's Mexican-ish American. Right. It is. I did build once a really, really cool, absolutely hand-done, blown-out Mexican place. It worked for a little while, but it wasn't quite what the area that we're in wanted. But we do have a really high-quality Mexican place. Think of the process of Chipotle, but you fill it with like pork belly and rosemary and oranges and duck confit with hominy, and like 10 different sauces that all range from really mild to really like roasted habanero spicy. Like a Chipotle that's built with real passion and real soul. That's what we built inside of a small 400 square foot private dining room we did. It was about 12 years ago. It does like 5 customers a day. So that worked out pretty good. But it's like a Chipotle that a chef who's a real chef would be proud of. That's the kind of place that we built. And
I take it from the way you're talking that restaurant's no longer around?
No, the Chipotle one is. The totally handcrafted Mexican one is not.
Okay.
It's a long story. Longer than we have for tonight, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I get it.
There's all different reasons why sometimes restaurants work and sometimes they don't.
Right.
If they don't work, you just move on. So that happens.
Just like anything else, you have to learn when to cut your ties and
absolutely. Move. I feel like an episode of Shark Tank when Olivia says it's a bad dog, just kill it, take it out back, kill it, move on. There's a lot to be said about lessons like that. Business is one thing. You can develop the most amazing thing that you think is going to work, and if it doesn't work, you just got to cut it and move on. Got to learn from your failures and fail fast.
Well, I think this is amazing. I'm on to the regular reposado, and then I'll get into the cellar select one.
Yeah.
and hopefully one day we'll see the anejo around here.
It'll be in country probably 6 weeks. I used to say it'll be here in 2 weeks, and every time I say that, a truck breaks down somewhere. One truck or the last truck we had come into the country drove all the way from the distillery to New Jersey and broke down about 5 miles from the warehouse in New Jersey, and it took 4 days to get apart with a truck sitting on the side of the road. The driver sent pictures and everything of all the tequila still being wrapped up because it was a full truck of stuff. So it was you never know what's going to happen. So every time something's going to go fast, a truck breaks down, hurricane shows up, who knows what. Right? Always something that's going to make it later. So I say 2 weeks, it'll be 6. So I just say 6.
Yeah. I mean, it's better to under deliver than over.
Yeah, I hate that saying.
Yeah.
I only hate it because I think it should take 2 weeks to move one product from one place to another. The whole rest of the world thinks it's going to take 6. So now I'm just going to start quoting what the rest of the world thinks it should be, not what I think it should be.
And especially in the spirit industry, everything, I'm from a completely different industry that, is starting to shift personally. And, I'm used to, now, and then, you get into the spirit industry and it's like, we'll catch up with you in 3 weeks. We're good.
It's really like 2.5 months.
Well, I mean, it's like, all right. 2 days later, I'm texting, are we still good?
Yeah. We were going to launch Cambio back in, I think it was the end of 22. And we ended up launching it in March of 24. So it doesn't, everything that you think is going to go a certain way, something is going to get tossed in where it's just going to be longer and more difficult. So that's one thing I've learned that's different about restaurants, right? Chefs are always instant gratification hogs. Like that's all we love. Make a dish, eat it, you love it, great. I go to the next thing. For this, you make tequila, and I got to wait 3 years. And then you love it, and then I've got to wait longer to keep selling it. That's something I've had to learn is more patience.
Yeah, a lot more patience.
More than I like, for sure.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that note. I mean, I'm used to. Yesterday was appropriate. Today is overdue.
Yeah.
So one of the guys says, "Are you selling in New Jersey?"
Not yet. We're selling. There are a couple of retail stores in New York that have it. New Jersey is the base of our main warehouse. So when we import to the warehouse in New Jersey, and then we split it from there around the whole country. There's a number of reasons logistically why you would go to different places depending on where you sell. Right. For us at this time, for our company size and our company scale and where we sell, New Jersey was the easiest place for us to move to. But we've got product in warehouses in Florida, Texas, California, and New Jersey. But everything goes to Jersey first. Lots of trucks flow in and out of that whole area, so it's an easy place for us to do it. Not being sold yet in New Jersey, we will. Like I said, there's one guy in Long Island that has it for us, just because he wanted it, and he's been a great supporter. And then we'll officially launch New York sometime next year, probably the second quarter of next year. That we'll launch New York. We'll do New York, Georgia, and where was it? We were talking about this morning. One other state next year. We'll definitely add Colorado next year. So by the end of next year, we'll be in like 12 states, which makes up 97% of all the tequila sold. So,
hey, don't forget about Kansas City, because
I don't. I was actually looking at a map today, thinking I could go to Kansas and stop, and then go to Texas afterwards. So,
Kansas City, comparatively speaking, Kansas City has probably a better tequila market. Let me rephrase. Kansas City, Missouri has a better tequila market than probably Colorado and Texas. I mean, as far as selection goes, there's no way I would be as involved in tequila, or let me put have the collection that I have here at the house. And yes, I make frequent stops. Anytime I take a trip, I'm always shopping. I probably have just over 400 bottles of tequila in my collection.
Dude, that's a lot. Wow.
And I've tried almost every single one. Some of them I'll pick up and it's like I'll get to it, one day when I have a bunch of friends over and, we do a bottle share or something like that.
Yeah.
Kansas City really does have a spectacular tequila selection. And we do get those rare finds.
That's actually really neat. Yeah, one of the things that we were talking about because there's all the artistry of the way that we make the tequila, and that piece of it is the foundation of what we do. And there's the business side of how you sell it, where you place it, things like that. And we were talking this morning about with our whole team, both our consulting team and our national sales team, about the states that we go into and when we enter them and how and at what stage do we do those different things at. We added Tennessee about 2 months ago, and it turns out that in Nashville we've sold 160 cases in a couple of months, which is a massively fast opening.
Absolutely.
So it's one thing, and Arizona's gone really well. Wisconsin has gone very, very well too. So we opened a few smaller secondary and tertiary markets in the last couple of months, and they've all been really successful. And so one of the things that we're working through is how do we add more places like Kansas City and Missouri, and because they're great, they're states that all the really big tequila brands completely ignore, right?
Yeah.
And we're a brand that works. We do the work on the ground. We spend the effort and the time in every place that we're in gets the same amount of attention. It doesn't matter if it's LA and San Diego or Nashville or Kansas City. We spend time in all of our markets, and we take care of our customers with a high level of service, the way that a lot of big brands don't. So for us, we think we can be really successful with a lot of markets that are smaller, but with high quality individuals that really love tequila. So it makes perfect sense what you're describing right now. It actually lines up a lot with what we're working on and what we're planning for.
So just, and I know it's not a tequila, but tequila enthusiasts think the world of it. But we had a ton of Cabalito come down through the area, and I was seeing unicorn bottles on the shelf.
Wow.
Of both the expression type, but all the way from Blanco all the way up to Añejo landed in the area, and one of my friends who owns a liquor store reached out to me, and unfortunately, I got my money tied up in a bunch of other things right now that I'm trying to do,
like 400 bottles of tequila.
yeah. But I would have loved to have gone and bought a bottle of, tequila from my friend at Bubbles.
Yeah.
And, I'm just throwing it out there. He always has an amazing selection, and he knows what to look for. But it is one of, the places in Missouri that, along with a few others that, I know that, when special bottle releases come out, he's going to have it. And he kind of gives me the heads up. Sometimes I take advantage of it. Sometimes I don't. But I mean, like another special release that I was, oh yeah, Bubbles is king. I'm getting some comments.
I made a note too. I got it.
Hit me up. I'll hook you up. Amazing people over there. But I mean, so another amazing tequila that came out that had a very amazing backstory to it was the Chinaco 50th anniversary bottle.
Yeah.
And surprisingly, a good amount hit the Kansas City, Missouri side. And all my friends in other states that aren't so fortunate was hitting me up, and it's like, dude, a bottle. I'm not going to say how many I had go through my hands, but
you'll be a distributor by the end of the day.
Yeah, it was into the 5 figures.
Nice.
That's so amazing. I mean, that's got to say a lot of amazing things to have a very special bottle of Chinaco come into the area. And if you haven't heard the story, I'd love to tell you sometime, and this is not the day to do it.
Yeah, I'd love to, for sure.
It is truly incredible. You know, it to me is a special tequila that you put together, and you know, when I sip it and drink it, to me, I mean, immediately think, you know, that, and I'm not trying to blow wind up your dress or anything like that, but you know, it you almost know that somebody who has a culinary background had put their love into it, because it is very complex but very well balanced.
Yeah.
You know, to me, it's, you know, huge citrus notes, which I absolutely love, but yet you still get that sweetness from the cooked agaves.
Yep, I agree.
That, you know, is, you know, just creating this amazing background profile. It doesn't immediately roll to the back of your mouth and dissipate. That all that oil is still there and coating your tongue, and you're tasting it minutes after you've already sipped it.
Yeah, it wants to linger, right? It wants to dance with you. Yeah, I agree. It definitely hangs around.
And it's amazing. I mean, it's really a phenomenal tequila.
Thank you. That's the idea. We just want to make really, really great stuff and sell it for, you know, a normally reasonable price. So I think there's a lot of really, really amazing tequila makers. Some of them make great tequila and they sell it for $150 a bottle, and that's, you know, that's fine. That's their model. I think the tequila. I think if you're going to spend $50 for a bottle of Blanco, it should blow you out of the water. It should be really special. And I think you know, one of the things that's different about tequila and whiskey is, you know, we get to make our spirit, and this is as close to to immediate gratification as a chef is going to get for a spirit. We get it. We make Blanco and it's in our customers' hands in a few months.
Right.
You know, that's unusual. You know, white bourbon is rough when it's young. You can make beautiful tequila that's really nice to drink when it's got no time and barrel on it. So I think that, you know, we should all look for and crave and expect higher quality versions that don't need to be $80, $90, $100 a bottle. I think you can make really beautiful tequila that's handmade only with Tahonas, only with wood fermentation. I mean, there are not a lot of brands that are only wood fermentation and only Tahona.
No.
A lot of people use copper stills, a lot use stone ovens, but to be 100% Tahona and 100% wood fermentation is unusual. That doesn't happen with too many places. So I think that's really special. And then the fact that we deliver it to customers where you can buy a bottle of Blanco on the shelf that's been aged in barrel for a couple weeks, to even give it more complexity for $50 a bottle is pretty rare.
Yeah, I saw. I was looking quickly before we jumped online. I mean, Old Town Tequila selling it for $44.99 on the Blanco.
Yeah, some retailers, everybody buys it for the same price, right? So the part that we get to do is we get to sell it, and then they decide what they want to sell it for.
So
you got
they sell it for a little less than everybody else does too, that dictate a lot of it. So I mean, you may be selling it, and I'm just throwing a number, for $40.
Yeah.
But California's taxes are, well, we know where California.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I don't know how Old Town does it for $45. I don't. They sell so much tequila. I don't think it matters. They're just like, just give it to us, we'll sell it. And even I can't believe how much they go through. It's crazy. So it's nuts.
I mean, they're definitely a staple, and they do
for sure
for what they have there. And
yeah,
I was fortunate enough to meet the owner and of it, and I hope one day to go there and actually visit, and then go up to his office. And
me too. He liked our Blanco more than
3,000 bottles of tequila in his office. So hey, you know, 400's not bad.
Yeah, not bad. Yeah, right. That's a whole different level, right?
Yeah.
For me, you, for everyone else, that is just a whole different.
So
for sure.
Yeah. So you got the extra anejo coming out.
Yeah. So we've got so the way we split our brand is all of our white labels. So the front white label, first of all, it's made from handmade amate paper. So that's it. It is it's from all the labels come from Puebla. They make the paper in sheets. They're like 20 by 24 sheets of handmade paper, using the same tradition and the same trees that they've used for 400 years. We then take those sheets and we give them to a team in Guadalajara that uses 19th century printing presses to deboss it and to cut them and to apply the glue in the back by hand. So it's a completely handmade process. I don't know anyone who uses amate paper for their labels on their bottles. It's like $1.25 a label. It's absolutely insane. Nobody would ever pay this much for a label. It's almost
Except for a chef.
But it's really cool. It's got a great texture. Every label looks different.
Yeah.
If you put 20 bottles together, they're all going to be different. That's how you know that it's actually handmade paper, and made from real pulp and real trees. They all look a little bit different. And then so our flagship always has the white labels. So we'll have our Blanco Repo and soon to coming our Añejo with the flagship white labels, and then our Cellar series, the red labels. Yeah. So these are all really special. Every version of our Cellar series is a one-off. So we'll make each one time, and we'll never make them ever again. Every version has a number, a name, a story on the back of it about why it was created and how it was made. Sometimes there'll be a special set of barrels. They might be the one you're holding is actually a mistake. That's el desliz, which means like the slip up or like the small error. It didn't start out that way. It started out as a large error, but it turned out to be a really amazing tequila in the end. Our desliz is the very first drops of tequila we made at the distillery that we're at now. So the very first versions of Real Cambio that we ever created are in the desliz. It was 4 barrels. It's all that we made as a test batch. I don't know very many brands, much less very many distilleries that are released the very first drops they made with an entirely new process out to the public. So that's it. That is literally the first Cambio that's ever been created, and we'll never be able to do it again. So it's this perfect little moment in time that we can sell to customers, and everybody who buys a bottle of it has like this little picture of history that we can never possibly recreate. So that's the idea behind the Cellar series, is to create all these little ideas, and every version that we come out with is one little moment in time that people can buy. They're all really tiny production.
Right.
I say tiny meaning like 1,000 bottles. Like that's very, very small for tequila.
Yeah.
We have one version that's 250 bottles. So they're all going to be from different places and different ideas, but they're really special and really unique. And the idea is just to create and special tequilas and show what the breadth of tequila can really be, because there's so much more to tequila than I think that people recognize. There's really this wide palette of what you can create when you start with a high quality base spirit and then you combine it with multiple different barrel styles from all over the world. Tequila has the ability to create thousands of different flavor profiles just by making a great base and then adding it to different barrels and then combining different barrels after that. So it's really unique and really special.
And the one thing that I would like to note that I thought was fabulous was it was the toppers. I mean, nice wood toppers.
Yeah.
I know it seems minuscule, but I mean, a lot of them are pretty plain, and a lot of them gone to the, synthetic, and it's just basically a synthetic cork plug for that matters. But then on this Cellar series,
I know
I can kill somebody with this thing. I mean, it's pretty heavy.
Yeah, David could have put that in the sling and taken on Goliath for sure with that thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be machined.
Yeah, they're all machine metal. They're all created in Mexico. There's a blend of metal they use to make capsules with, and those are all molded and then machined metal. So it's serious. They're for real. We wanted to create the impression that that our tequila should be taken seriously, and that capsule certainly does it.
And then you know,
Yeah, the logo
engrave
on
or
the
probably
back.
CNC your little
Yeah,
logo on the top. I mean, it
yeah,
just makes it really special. You know,
yeah. It's really neat.
when I when I finish this bottle, you know, I'll be able to throw it
Keep
in
it. You
my.
can actually take a pair of pliers and knock out the cork on the inside, and it makes a shot glass.
Oh, I never even thought about that.
Yeah, it makes an almost perfectly 2-ounce shot glass.
Oh,
It's like
man, my
1.85.
wife
I'm
is
sure
not gonna
somebody's going to
like
go measure it with a millimeter scale, but yeah, it almost makes a perfect shot glass.
so I mean, one day you wake up, you know what? I'm not going to do a orange chicken or fish. I'm going to make everybody happy. We're going to do tequila. And
Yeah, that was the idea, right?
what a better way to make everybody happy by giving them tequila, which I
There's
mean,
nothing like
don't know.
50,000 cases of tequila to make people happy.
Yes.
That sounds
So
great to me.
I mean, it is scientifically proven that tequila is an upper.
Yeah.
Um, because of some of the enzymes and
Yeah, I know
it is
somebody's
a
right now
fruit.
starting to type and hammer on their keyboard and saying, "No, it's not. It's still alcohol. It's a
Yeah,
depressant."
yeah.
I get it. I know it's a depressant.
But compared to beer and bourbon
Yeah.
and whiskey and other stuff, where it's a downer. I mean, dude, we got you're trying to really blow everybody's dress up and
We're trying, that's for sure. I think that there's there's a lot that agave and tequila has to give that we haven't seen yet. I think there's a lot more to the spirit. I love mezcal. I've got 30 different mezcals in my bar, and I love all of them. Mezcal has the benefit tequila doesn't, is they get to use whatever. It's like moonshine, right?
yeah,
The restrictions are less, so they get to use whatever plants they want, and yada yada yada. So I think with the advent of and the increasing popularity of mezcal, tequila gets thought of as it's kind of like one thing. Like I like agave, I like tequila, and I like agave, and it's like one kind of a thing. And there's and our approach is that tequila is much more complex, and it has a much broader scope than what people think tequila has. There's a lot more to this little plant than what he gives it credit for. There's even sub varieties of the plant that we've been working on. We have a company we work with based in Arundel, where my wife's family is from. And every time that there is a plant that grows as a mutant variety, they will separate the plant and they'll grow an entire field of this subset. So we've got 9 varieties growing right now, and we're going to take those varieties with our fermentation process and start fermenting them and seeing what kinds of other flavors can we make with tequila by using these natural mutations that happen in the fields. Sometimes a disease or a pest will wipe out a whole field, but 10 plants will survive. So the idea is to take the 10 plants that survived and create a new subvariety of blue agave, so that it still falls under the species category, but it's a different version. They grow differently. They have different sugar contents. They look a little bit different. Some have like yellow tiger stripes. Some have like streaks of yellow and green running through the middle of it. But they all grow as different agaves of the same species. So the neat thing is that we can take those versions and combine them with our different yeast and our different fermentation techniques to produce different types of tequila that nobody's ever made before. And then we can also help to diversify all of the different types of plants in Mexico, so that we end up with, down the road, 2, 3, 4 decades down the road, lots of different types of blue agave, so that even though tequila has to be made from one species of plant, we might end up with multiple different sub-varieties and different flavors that all those plants make, grown in different microclimates all around Jalisco and the different states that can grow it.
yeah.
That's really interesting to us, and that's the long-term projects that we're working on. The beginning of our brand right now is really just selling Cambio and what we've created so far and why it's special. the long-term vision, is really how do we make tequila something that's respected around the world, where everyone wants to drink this spirit, and that we can sustainably grow enough agave in Mexico to supply the rest of the world with it. There's a lot of really neat things that we plan for and that we think about, that we work on all the time. And all that's just like a small little window into the long-term prospects of what Cambio can grow into over time.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, over the years that I've been drinking tequila, which I'm going to say is probably pretty close to 25 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's become a much sexier drink, but with less products, I'm going to say, added to it.
Yeah.
Where when I probably first started, I'll admit it. I mean, Jose Cuervo Gold,
Yeah, everybody does. Their first really terrible shot.
Yeah.
And it burns all the way down.
Yeah.
And it burned your whole mouth for like a half an hour.
Right.
But that's everyone's first shot at tequila, right?
Yep. And now it's become such a sexy drink, that, you don't need to do anything to it. I know people throw ice in it, or hopefully that's it, but I know other people do other things. And it's still, a very complex for being a fruit. Of course it's growing for the deal. And I really want to, get into, because you keep on saying, that you use 4 different types of yeast. Can you explain or tell us anymore, or you want to leave?
No, that's it.
Sorry.
I would say that we're probably one of the most transparent brands and the most honest brands there are in tequila right now. And I will tell everyone who asks everything about the way we do it. I have nothing to hide. My wife is much more closely guarded than I am, and she will say, stop telling people about the maceration process for the fibers and why you do it that way, and stop telling people that you do it at this temperature. Like, keep it like closely guarded. And I always respond with, so what is the worst thing that's going to happen? And over the next 20 years, everyone starts to adjust the way they make their tequila. And in 20 years, we end up with 400 or 500 brands of incredibly great tequila. We all could benefit from that. We are certainly going to benefit from that. The rest of the world is going to benefit from higher quality tequila production. No one is going to lose in me talking about the way we do it and opening up people's ideas and minds to things being done differently. The society in general is going to have a better quality of spirit. That's better for everyone, right? And the way we make tequila is so different from whiskey. I love bourbon and I love rye and all kinds of great stuff. Tequila is different, right?
Right.
Nobody ever drinks a glass of bourbon and says, "Boy, I know where that corn came from." Nobody's ever said that before, right? But you drink a really great bottle of a really great glass of tequila, you're like, "Oh, that's all Highland. It's all like high fruits and beautiful tropical papaya, and a little bit of orange flower and an orange blossom, and no, that one's all from the valley floor. Like that's all minerals and terroir and earth." That discussion about spirits almost never happens, but it always happens with tequila. But it doesn't happen with other things. So I think it's really special and it's really unique. The more that happens around the world, the more tequila we all make that is a better quality tequila, the more all of us benefit from it.
Absolutely.
So it's the antithesis, it's the opposite of what all of my traditional, really hardcore Mexican family would say is keep everything close, don't tell anyone what you're doing. And I say tell everyone what we're doing because we're all going to benefit from it. I promise Cambio will benefit just fine from selling a whole bunch of really great, amazing additive-free tequila that's really expresses, the plants and the terroir and the people that make it. It's such a special, identifiable thing with a culture. I would say maybe Scotch is something that is as special, but and all of the great people that make Scotch feel the same way that I do about all the great people that make tequila.
Yes.
Right? But you can make bourbon anywhere. It's made in Canada. It's made in Mexico. As long as you follow a few set of rules, you can make it anywhere.
Right.
It doesn't mean I don't love it. I've got as much bourbon downstairs as I do anything else. But tequila special, and the terroir and the plants. Nobody makes anything that takes 8 years to grow, except for the guys that make mezcal that take 30 years to grow. But that thing is unique and special, and it should be honored. And we should all spend as much time as we can trying to make that what consumers think about. When I drink tequila, I'm drinking 10 years of Mexican history.
Yes.
That's what people should really pay attention to, because that's what they're actually drinking. And so I think that's a really, really unique, special thing, and I think that should be talked about and honored all the time.
And one, I want to go on record that I have no bourbon in my house.
Really? None?
None. I got
Wow.
a neighbor who tries to force it on me, and I'm not apt to not try it. It's just, to me, it does not have a flavor profile that I enjoy like tequila. Tequila, it is special to me. I enjoy the flavor profile of the sweetness, and like you're mentioning, whether it's in the valley or in the highlands, you get different notes, minerality or sweetness and stuff like that, where, like you were implicating a little bit ago, oh yeah, I got corn from Iowa, and
Yeah, no.
and I got a burnt Missouri oak barrel. It just doesn't do anything for me, and I think that's what's made tequila so special for me, because out of the 400 bottles that I probably have laying around the house, each bottle has its unique profile that you can kind of pick up, and there's certain bottles I don't care who you are, and you put them in front of me blindfolded, and I know exactly
who they are.
where they're at.
Yep.
Because they have those sweet notes or those mineralities like cascoine.
Yeah.
That you can definitely pick it up. Where to me, I think if you look at like the color wheel of bourbon versus tequila, I think tequila is 3 or 4 times the different spikes versus what bourbon is, because they're all using corn, which you can grow in one season.
Yeah, not 8.
Yeah. And yes, the bourbon guys will go off and say something about, well, ours ages 8 years in a barrel, or whatever the case might be.
Yeah. That's really what bourbon is about, right? For bourbon and for most whiskeys, it's about the barreling process. And for tequila, it's about the plant and the growing and the terroir process.
Right.
It's like one spends all of its time in the ground, and one spends all of its time in a barrel.
Right.
So, yeah, I agree.
And you get all these amazing profiles because I mean when it's 8 years out in the elements and you have a dry season versus a wet season, or whatever, it changes the complexity. But then you guys turn around and like you're mentioning, well, now I'm going to cook it a little different, and it's a fruit, so it handles the sugars and stuff differently compared to a corn or a rye or whatever.
Absolutely, yeah. Even within our normal scope of things, there are farms that have different qualities of agave, and also different microclimates. So we've got farms that have agave that's more shaded, and also on hills that grow differently than ones that see full sun, and have more water. So we'll take the versions off the sides of hills that have more shade, that take longer to grow, and they're smaller piñas, and we'll use different yeast with them, and we'll ferment them separately. This is all stuff that's coming up in the next couple of years.
Yeah.
So really thinking about like, how did this agave grow? What does it need to express itself the most? How does this one particular part of this farm, not even the whole farm, and I always mistakenly say vineyards because I think about the way the grapes
Yes.
grow. But
Where
agave
tequila's a
grows in a
state.
similar fashion, but
Yeah.
much longer, but it expresses terroir in a similar way. So if you've got agave that grows on a flat plain that has lots of sun and lots of water, it's going to be a completely different flavor profile than the stuff that grows on the north side of a hill that gets a lot of shade. So we'll look at that and we'll take the farms that grow with lots of hills and different exposure and we'll ferment them differently with different yeast than we do the ones that are nice and bright and sunny. It's like growing stuff in Burgundy versus Provence. And you think about the agaves, they all grow the same way. And we can tell, you test them chemically and you look at their sugar content and their ages, and they'll be different. They won't be just the same. So to treat them the same, I think, is a disservice to the amount of time they spent growing. Agave is really special, man. I mean, any winemaker, for their grapes to grow for 8 years is something that they couldn't even imagine, right? Like they get one harvest a year, and for them that's really slow. But for tequila makers to get a harvest every decade that's a whole different level. So I think that we should, work as hard as we can and do as much as we can to show all that terroir and all that specialness. Because it's too important to all of us. It's too important to the quality of to the terroir that it grew in, to all the people that worked at those farms for 8 years before they got a harvest. So I think that we should do as much as we can to respect all of that history and all of that nature, and do as much as we can to bring out all those flavors. I know this is super in the weeds for everybody.
Oh no, absolutely.
I always sound like
I love
tequila's
it.
great. Just go drink it; it tastes good. Like that's easy, right?
But it all adds to the complexity of what we, have from one small batch to the next small batch.
Yeah.
And the reason why lots become so important because one lot had more or a wetter season or a drier season and so forth.
Yeah.
Some of the things that I'm starting to see in the tequila market is, Sergio Cruz just did one here out of 1414, is a fall harvest.
Yeah.
Because, you're taking that agave that's been in the sun
the whole summer
that's been storing those sugars.
Totally dried out, super concentrated. Yeah.
Right.
And as soon as you get to September, it rains like crazy and then it's all different. Yeah.
Which is kind of like wine. So you got the dessert wine that, is super sweet and, it comes in that tiny little bottle. You pay usually 5 times the amount that a normal big bottle costs.
Yeah.
But it produces this amazing, super concentrated wine.
Yeah.
I do like some wines, so
occasionally if you have to, right?
Yeah. My wife makes me go out and, But I mean, there's a lot of similarities to, something that's been around since, Jesus walked earth, on wines to what tequila is now doing today, which, the one thing I keep on
literally as old or older. So
yes. It is, go to Tequila Matchmaker and look. 1605 has not just one Tahona, but they have 2.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't think of one distillery that I visited that has ever had 2 Tahonas. Cascaween, 1.
Yeah. That was actually one of the issues with Cascaween is we wanted to make only Tahona. And they said, guys, we can't let you make like 100% Tahona. Only our family brand is allowed to make 100% Tahona. So that was one of the reasons. Plus, we would just mess up their whole distillery.
Yeah.
We've got two Tahonas, and in the old pictures you'll see there's one wheel on them. But the Tahonas, I mean, it's huge. It's like 15 feet across. So I said to him last year, I said, guys, can we put like a second wheel on I know the structure can handle it. Add a second wheel. So they did. They had more wheels made, and now both Tahonas have double wheels to crush faster. Because I know that the tradition and all the artistry is really important. I'm also thinking about efficiency from a business owner.
Right.
If we can crush it faster, we can macerate it faster. We can get this stuff moving along quicker. Because Tahona, it's slow. It takes a long time. So 2 wheels is always faster than 1. So now we have 2 wheels working in each one instead of 1 wheel working in each one.
Yeah, truly amazing. All right. Well, I'm running out of things. I enjoyed talking to you tremendously. You got any plugs coming up, that you'd like to throw out there besides, your añejo that you got sitting there?
So Cellar Series, the first 3 releases of Cellar Series are almost sold out. So we bottled 1, 2, and 4. Number 3 was a mistake in the distillery, and we'll never bottle a number 3. It was just it's lost to history. Unfortunately, it was really cool and it was great, but we made a small error. It happens sometimes when you're a small distillery or a small brand. So we've got other Cellar Series coming up next year. But if you want any of the very first versions or very first drops of Cambio, definitely get the El Desliz is the very first version we ever made. And then the añejo is coming up soon. There will not be a lot of añejo. It is going to be hard to find. We only made 400 cases of it, which is a tiny amount for being in 8 states, and it's going to last us for the next 6 months until we get to the next version, the next añejo that's ready. So it takes us a while to age it. It's an average of 18 months old. So the next añejo is going to be a while. It'll be like May before the next one comes out. So when you see it, I would buy it. The first one's always really special.
Somebody says to look forward to seeing it in Kansas City already.
Me too. Kansas sounds good. You guys in Missouri are doing a great job. So I think that's a great city for us to visit and really see what we can do there.
All right.
Dude, we will never say no as a brand. Every single possible idea has something great to take out of it. So we'll never be a brand that says you can't do something. All we say is we can. So
yeah. Awesome. Well, if you hang in there with me for just a couple of seconds, we'll go ahead and wrap this up. I've enjoyed our session. Hopefully a lot of people picked up some different perspectives of, making tequila,
me
from
too.
a chef standpoint, which I think truly made this tequila very special. And,
Thank you.
As I'm enjoying it tonight, now I wish I didn't open up one of these bottles, but all right, guys, we'll wrap it up. Thank you guys for some of the questions, and I tried to respond where I could, and if not, you know where to catch me.
And any questions anybody has, just send them to me, and we'll get them answered. I love talking about it, so send me emails, questions, texts, whatever. I don't care. It's great.
Awesome. Glad to hear it.
Thanks a lot.